we began to see the emergence of the historically black colleges. And those institutions played an enormous role in ensuring that blacks had access to education and an opportunity to move into the middle class. If you then were to look at the period, perhaps 1862 until about 1960 or so, one can say that those white institutions that came into existence, and you can go down the list and name them, also behaved in the same way as those institutions from 1636 to 1862, that they too did not educate blacks in significant numbers. And we were still being educated by the historically black colleges. And then after the civil rights movement in the 60s, some of those institutions reluctantly began to open their doors and to offer us an opportunity. But still, that was a trickle. It was not a full flood. The kind of bifurcated response that I'm talking about is one where I think the historically black colleges indeed have played an enormous role in ensuring that blacks in this country move into the middle class, that blacks became doctors and lawyers and judges and teachers, and those institutions continue to do that. I think for the most part, the traditionally white institutions have been Johnny come lately in this area.
Before we go on, those doctors, those lawyers, those teachers, those judges, like the HBCUs, would you say that there was an assumed role that just as the HBCUs provided education to African Americans who would not otherwise get into a white institution, did those doctors, those lawyers, those teachers, those judges, do they innately carry with them a responsibility to carry on that mission of helping to empower the black community?
Absolutely. I mean, unequivocally, yes. Because if it were not for these institutions, they would not be those judges and those lawyers and those corporate titans. And so I look at myself in that regard. I mean, I went to an HBCU undergraduate. I went to Tuskegee, and I arrived at Tuskegee. I had some deficits, a deficit here or there, and that institution, accepted me warts and all, and basically put me in a position where I could become president of this institution. And I could become the chancellor in Wisconsin. I can become the vice president at Auburn. And so once I assumed those positions, how could I not remember how I got there? I mean, how could I not do that? And how could I not give back to those institutions that propelled me into the middle class? And so when I look at those lawyers and doctors and professionals who would not be where they are today if it were not for the Morgans and the Coppins and the Morehouses and the Spellmans and the Hamptons, absolutely they have an obligation to.
But Doc, there is something you also noted: the middle class. And for instance, here in Baltimore, a person may have grown up in West Baltimore, down by the Shields Place and Perkins Homes, below North Avenue, on the inside of Fulton Avenue, where that was a segregated black community. But with the advent of civil rights, with the progress made in the 60s, with the HBCUs creating a black middle class, we moved beyond the Beltway to areas like Woodlawn, Randallstown, Owings Mills. And I'm wondering, Doc, if the integration served us well.
Well,
do we still have that innate responsibility, as did the HBCUs and those original doctors, lawyers, teachers, judges, to help empower the black community?
Yeah, well, certainly as blacks in Baltimore and elsewhere in the United States receive their education, and many of them receive them from HBCUs, they then begin to migrate to suburbia. And so you see that all over the country. Mm-hmm. But there's also a sort of interesting fact about that, and it is that although that migration took place on Sunday mornings, if you go to those churches in West Baltimore or those churches in East Baltimore and you see who is in the pews,
And many people
9
from
times
the
out of 10.
burbs are
That's
coming
correct.
back
And
to
so they
the
are
city.
coming back because
Or they never left. They would at least come
absolutely,
on
or
Sunday.
they never left. And so there is this kinship, with the place that actually enabled you to make that trek to the suburbs. And I see evidence of that, as I go in and out of churches on Sunday morning. And so that's the first piece. The second piece is that we here.
Great point.
Yeah, we here at Morgan last year, we had a 61% increase in our alumni giving rate. And so those
61%?
A 61% increase in our alumni giving rate, and the percent of alumni who actually gave back to the institution. And certainly when we look at who is giving back, it certainly is those individuals who have prospered, from their educational experiences here at Morgan. And what I'm saying to those alums, wherever they are, whether they're in Randallstown or Pikesville or whatever, that this is an opportunity, for you to invest back in that place that sprang you to where you are, to ensure that we put some springs in the legs of our young men and our young women here at Morgan to basically leap to where you have found yourself.
Dr. Wilson, do you think that we have maintained the fire alluded to by Benjamin Mays and Dr. King and Maya Angelou, the fire of progress? When I look at the number of historically black colleges, when I started in 1983 at Morehouse versus the number of historically black colleges and universities in 2012, we're closing black colleges. It seems as if our ancestors, fresh out of slavery, had a little more common sense than we're exhibiting today. You think?
Well,
in the sense that we're closing. We have more money, we have six-figure incomes, we have houses in suburbia, college degrees like never before.
Well, no, you started this by asking, I thought.
Do we still have the fire?
Yeah, do we still have the fire? So when you are asking, do we, I assume that question is, do you think the younger generation has the kind of fire in their belly, that their great-grandfathers and their great-grandmothers had? And I have to say that that's not an easy answer, because I have 8,100 students on my campus here at Morgan, and when I walk the campus every day, I run into an inordinate number of students who certainly are burning up on the inside. They have that fire. They have that desire to go out there and be the innovators and to be the leaders and to put themselves in a position where they're going to be the inventors and they're going to lead the world. And so I see that, and I promote that, and I encourage that, and I nurture that. Now, I also unfortunately see students, not only here, but elsewhere, that somewhere along the way, they perhaps have lost a little bit of that, and they need some additional kinds of support. They need to have in their presence every day examples, real examples of individuals, who have been successful, individuals who have kind of made it through and leaped some of the hurdles that they had to make their way through and leap before they get to the institution. And I occasionally see young men on campus, for example, who are walking around, with their pants almost on the ground.
How does that make you feel?
I stop them and I have a presidential conversation with them. I rarely say to them, young men, pull your pants up.
Teach me now, please. I run into young people all the time. What's your tactic? What's your technique?
Well, I try to give them a little bit more to think about, and so my standard line with them is to take them aside because I don't want to embarrass them, and I'll basically say to that young man, I'd say, what's your name? And he'll tell me that, and I said, we here at Morgan, are about growing success, and we want to make sure that you are always in a position to be successful. And as such, you do not want to give anyone any additional reason to discriminate against you, to stand in the way of that success. And so just think about that, because what I'm seeing now is you're voluntarily giving someone a reason not to put you in the success pipeline.
How do they see it?
I tell you, each time I have that conversation with a young man, they kind of stand there for about 5 seconds. I move on. And then after about 15, 20 seconds later, I'll turn around and look over my shoulder. The pants are up, and I see a little bit more.
Well, what do you do when it's girls with the pants hanging down?
I have a similar kind of conversation with them as well. It's a little bit more delicate, but in my convocation address here, I basically said to our young ladies that some of them, and once again, I'm not talking about the majority of our students here at Morgan. I'm just talking about some of our students, and you'll find some of the students.
Well, you didn't have to deal with what the president of Morehouse had to deal with. His was a whole different ball of wax. I don't know if you heard that scenario, but
yeah, I did, but that's
even more sensitive.
That's here nor there. But we're basically trying to just say to our young men and our young ladies that you are Morgan. We are.
It's supposed to mean something. It stands for something.
Well, yes, it stands for history. It stands for legacy. It stands for what those great grandparents and those ancestors left here. And so you are walking on history, and you need to walk proudly on this history. And you need to prepare yourself so when you walk across this stage here and you get that sheepskin, that you're going to be the best in the world. And that's what our faculty here is committed to, and that's what I'm as president is committed to.
We're going to take a pause, come back. We're talking with Dr. David Wilson, president, Morgan State University. Keep watching BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth.